To start off our conversation, I would like to ask you to share your observations and your assessment of the prevailing state of migration around the world.
I believe, Ruwandi, that there is movement across the global at a very, very severe rate, I would believe, and you'd see that. The other is that the young students who want to go overseas, just wants to go and see new horizons. Even though during that time, I have not had inquiries and interest of migrating to Australia or Canada or New Zealand like in the last 3 years. This is the impact. Now we are talking about due to economic reasons and what the country is experiencing during this period as compared to a time where Sri Lanka was going through during the war period. So this is the level of intensity of people wanting to migrate. There has been a lot of Sri Lankans who went to England. There are a lot of skilled migrants started coming to Australia. The Eurasian community came to Australia first in the 70s, and they were Sri Lankans. Canada is also a very popular destination. The Tamil community moving on to Canada for safe haven. Australia, what has actually happened is that everybody knows someone, relative, friends. So that is the reason that Australia has become a very popular destination, and not forgetting Melbourne as a city. People who migrate now, there is no culture shock compared to the time that I came in the late 80s.
Migration has become a day-to-day word that we use in conversation. We talked about this in a more specific detail with Sanji Caldera. Stay tuned.
Some bonds give more returns. Get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LMDtv Finance.
The latest issue of LMD is available at lmdmall.lk as well as selected supermarkets and bookshops. You can also access the digital version on WhatsApp and our social media platforms.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is migration and the brain drain. And I'm talking with Sanji Caldera, who is the Managing Director and the Principal Migration Consultant at Sanji Caldera Associates. Sanji, it's lovely to have you on our show and welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ruwandi.
To start off our conversation, I would like to ask you to share your observations and your assessment of the prevailing state of migration around the world.
Yes, I believe, Ruwandi, that there is movement across the global at a very, very severe rate, I would believe, and you'd see that even the airline industry should be doing pretty well because people move and for various reasons. Some of them move because there is a war in their country and places like Ukraine or Palestine or Israel. The other is that the young students who want to go overseas, I think that will come up later on, who just wants to go and see new horizons. And I'm thinking that sometimes certain countries, they lose their identity too, because it's a melting pot with lots of countries, lots of Western countries, I had to admit.
And if we zoom in to talk about Sri Lankans, I know there was a lot of migration happening in the last 2 years, but can you give us your take on this?
Very good question, Ruwandi. I have been practicing for the last 20 years, and at the time that Sri Lanka was going through war and where people were living in fear. But even though during that time, I have not had inquiries and interest of migrating to Australia or Canada or New Zealand like in the last 3 years. So this is the impact. Here, once we are talking about fear for one's life and wants to go to a safe country, now we are talking about due to economic reasons and what the country is experiencing. This period has been, there is more interest during this period as compared to a time where Sri Lanka was going through during the war period. So this is the level of intensity of people wanting to migrate.
Migration is, of course, a fact of life, and people are going for greener pastures and they're going to make their life better. However, what if I say a statement like people are leaving Sri Lanka when Sri Lanka needs them the most? What are your thoughts on this statement?
Yes, definitely. I feel very guilty sometimes that in my role that a movement of talent, movement of skilled people across to it's going to happen whether I consult or they do that them on their own or go to another consultant. But I still feel that I have spoken about this with professionals when they say, look, you are now migrating, what happens to your position? There is a lot of educated, qualified, experienced people. I believe that when certain people move on, there's plenty of opportunities. Those opportunities are created for the younger people to step up because there are lots of qualified people who are looking for work. And when certain people are migrating, those positions become vacant and can be filled up, certainly can be filled up by people in the periphery waiting for those positions.
When we talk of Sri Lankans who are migrating, we see that most of them go to Canada and Australia and of course other countries as well. But zooming in on these countries, especially Australia, what appeal does Australia have for Sri Lankans?
Yeah, I think there are originally, Ruwandi, if you do go back in history, there has been a lot of Sri Lankans who went to England. However, it appears that after the white-only policy was moved from Australia, there are a lot of skilled migrants started coming to Australia. The Eurasian community came to Australia first in the 70s, and they were Sri Lankans. Now, Canada is also a very popular destination that has come about due to the war and the Tamil community moving on to Canada for safe haven. Now, Australia, what has actually happened is that everybody knows someone, relative, friends, so they have that comfort zone of going to Australia, somebody meeting them, giving them some accommodation. They always have that in Australia more than any other country, perhaps in Canada too, but Australia and of course the cricket that brings people together too. So that is the reason that Australia has become a very popular destination, and not forgetting Melbourne as a city has I can't tell you a count, but most probably at the cricket, you'll know how many people turn up at the cricket. So it's a huge community. And people who migrate now, there is no culture shock compared to the time that I came in the late 80s.
Yes, Australia, of course, has become a melting pot.
Yes, it is. They feel comfortable with it socially, from their food preferences. There's absolutely, they won't miss anything. Back in specifically Melbourne, I have to mention, not whole of Australia.
And Sanji, if I ask you, how attractive are Sri Lankans to Australia?
There was a time, I hope I'm saying the correct thing, in about 35 years back, as Sri Lankans, we didn't have an identity really. We had an identity as Indians, because we looked like Indians and Sri Lankans looked similar. But I have to say, cricket has made that division. And Sri Lankans are really, Ruwandi, I'm not saying because I'm a Sri Lankan, they are absolutely loved by the Australians for many reasons. Now, how am I qualified to say that? One thing is, in our work, we do a lot of business, do a lot of employer-sponsored migration. in that there is always preference to Sri Lankans as employees. And the employers go out and say, do you have any friends? Do you have any people in Sri Lanka that can come and work? They are very, very hardworking. Sometimes we have this conception of that we feel that Sri Lankans they're lazy or whatever it is, but no, compared to, they work very hard, and there's ample testimony to that of how the Sri Lankans have established themselves in Australia.
Is this true for all industries, or are there specific industries that we are more sought after?
No, right across. There is many entrepreneurs, and there are professionals, and there are tradespeople. They all across the board. There is no specific industry, like sometimes we talk about India, where they bring the IT technology from Bangalore. No, across the board. And not forgetting, one of the reasons for that is that the education system in Sri Lanka, and especially the universities that are approved by the University Grants Commission, is fully recognized as comparable to an Australian qualification. That is one of the reasons that many Australians do have the opportunity to migrate to Australia, and many Sri Lankans migrating to Australia.
Let's talk a little bit about demographics. Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, do you see different migration patterns or different migration needs when you look at Sri Lankans, across different generations?
Yes, without making a mistake with whether it's Gen X also, but let's say that the age category of India getting close to 40, they have young families. They want to make sure that their children are secured, that they have a education. So they do make sacrifices to migrate to Australia for the reason of stability and providing their children an opportunity more than what they have had. Then you have the young people who are qualified and a few years of experience. They want to expand, get more opportunities, and career advancement. That is, let's talk about the age between, let's say, 25 to, let's say, 30, 35. They've got a professional and they want to really advance. And the younger generation they want to do something different, especially they're tech savvy, and they want to explore the world. So I wouldn't have going to school. I wouldn't have thought about going to Australia, but the children now in the teenagers, they want to go to either Australia or Canada or the USA. They want something completely new. So different objectives.
It's time to take a very short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about migration.
What makes a truly awesome insurance company? Is it the skills to manage big numbers and big responsibilities? Well, that's definitely part of it. But there's more. It's the people. They're awesome. Super passionate about looking out for others and putting in their time for people's finances. It's not just the people. It's how we do things that's awesome. From being trendsetters of the industry to being connectors or inventors. It's about well-being and how we achieve it. Our teams hustle non-stop to meet the needs of the people. That's why we're on the rise. But it's not just about how we do things either. It's about how we improve things. Helping our clients thrive in a world that's full of awesome goals to achieve. Making the maximum out of the minimum. But wait, there's more to it. There's one last thing that truly makes an insurance company awesome. It's that we care about our people and our customers. All of this combined, it's been a pretty awesome year. And we're excited for tomorrow.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with Sanji Caldera about migration and the brain drain. Sanji, in your experience, what are the hidden costs of migration that we don't always think about or talk about?
I can answer that through my personal experience, Ruwandi. It tears families apart, the first generation. When I did migrate to Australia, it was not as easy to come back to Colombo. I mean, because of work, I now travel to Sri Lanka quite often. But when you migrate for many years. You don't see your family, you don't see your siblings, you don't see your parents. It tears the family apart. Now, my children don't feel it because they are either born here or they are with the family. I can sometimes, when my children travel overseas, even for work or so, I feel it. And now I reflect on saying what my parents would have seen. And that is a cost that it'll always, people don't take that into account. When they do decide to migrate, especially leaving their parents and siblings, not the whole family, but some families over years, their whole family then will migrate. So that is a cost that people don't take into account.
And what about the life-changing experiences of settling in another country, let's say Australia?
Yes, the Australian social security system doesn't kick in immediately. It takes a lot of time. That means it doesn't give you a safety net. So one needs to come and basically hit the ground running, if I say that, take any job to pay the bills. And Sri Lankans, they, from day number one, they will look for work, look for opportunities. So and there is also some support, that first month to stay at a friend's place or a relative's place. So, and as soon as they start, even if you take a family, as soon as one family member starts working and gets a full-time job, they can survive. So the transition is not too much. They do bring in a reasonable amount of funds, most of them, to pay the bill and maybe buy the first car or something like that. But but they settle down very, very quickly, because for a person who is looking out for work, there is no doubt about it. It may be hard to find a job, but for a person who is looking out for a job, will always find employment and opportunity.
And Sanji, if I ask you, what are your recommendations and what is your advice to Sri Lankans looking to move to Australia?
Yes, it's not, migrating to Australia or Canada or New Zealand is not a bit of roses. It's when they do come in, they know socially they would go down a lot. I mean, the status that one would have been enjoying in your home country will be not there for you. Then economically, they have to start at the beginning, and there are changes need to be made. There are no domestic help, something that certain Sri Lankans are privileged to have. You have to do everything on your own. And that safety net of being in Sri Lanka, we never have issues about, would I lose my job? There's family, there's friends, none of that. So you need to bear that in mind and make the transition. As I said, there is a cost, what you quite rightly mentioned, and that is being away from your family. So like that famous Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, can I get a job? Yes, I got a job. Can I get a house? Yeah, I got a job. I got a house. Now I want more. What about my family? Okay, they are there. So that comes in. You need to take that into account. But we call it the first generation migrants, but they are offspring would not feel that at all. I mean, they're wherever they live.
Sanjay, as a concluding question, what are the trends that we will see in terms of migration when we talk of it, of course, from a global point of view and regarding Sri Lankans looking to migrate?
Yes, as and when we really sincerely hope that Sri Lanka will improve economically. There are good signs. With that, relative to the country improving, there will be a reduction. There will be a lesser of interest to migrate. But especially Australia and Canada, New Zealand to a lesser extent, they want migrants to come. That is how this country is built. It's a very young country. So it will encourage. And I believe if I was to quote these statistics, that from all over the world, people migrate to Australia. Sri Lanka, being a small country, could be placed round about the 6th or 7th in volume of people who come to Australia. So you can just imagine, if you take the whole world, Sri Lanka is a small country, but the amount of people. So they are suitable. And of course, Sri Lanka's very high level of their educational, their literacy, if I call it here, is very high. So that takes them over. It will continue, but this sheer desperation that has taken place in the last 3 years, I would think may reduce the country, and we sincerely hope so it will happen.
We've been in conversation with Sanji Caldera, who is the Managing Director and Principal Migration Consultant at Sanji Caldera Associates. It was a delightful conversation with you, Sanji. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very passionate about it. I was an accountant, turned into a migration consultant in the last 20 years. So I absolutely enjoy this work, yes.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.